All right, folks, so we're here at the table, Bernard's table. We're trying to figure out how to best, first, ultimately, we want to plane a rabbit onto the top and the bottom to fit a piece of maple so that it would go on there like that, but with a 3/4 inch tongue all the way down the edge, and that will help keep the top flat, give a nice hard surface on the end to take abuse, and cover up the stains and the any more cracks and things like that. So here's the edge. So far, one of the edges, and after I've glued on the edging, so by ripping the boards apart, planing them or joining them, that took 3 inches off of a 3-foot wide tabletop. So I'm adding actual maple to each side and then the ends. So it'll be back to 36 wide by 72 long. Now the braces that were on the table before to help keep it flat were like this, where a slotted countersink screw was meant to slide back and forth in these joints as the table expands and contracts. So I'm going to go and upgrade on that, and I'm going to use flathead screws with washers in flat bottom channels. So I'm going to use a router to cut a channel that's almost as deep as that wedge is, and these will have washers under them, bottom down, bottom out on a flat bottom channel, and then, sorry for the disorganization. So this represents the tabletop thickness. This is this board screw is this long right now. Put in about a 1/4 inch deep channel. That moves the threads to within, say, 1/4 inch of the top of the table. This would be the top of the table. This would be the bottom. So I'll be drilling a drill bit to about a 1/4 inch, within a 1/4 inch of the top, and that gives me a 1/4 inch of planing that I could do if I had to flatten the table after I'm done putting the edging all around the table. Then I want to flatten it with a plane. But I certainly don't want to plane into the ends of a screw. So that's why I'm putting in a flat bottom machine thread versus a wood screw, which tapers. So that gives me the maximum holding power and reduces the risk of hitting a screw through the top as I plane down. So that's the plan. I made this jig for my router. Right now it's single purpose. It's meant to cut a channel. This piece here can slide back and forth. This piece here can slide back and forth like this if I ever wanted to make a wider rectangle or something like that. But for now, this will just be fixed here. It's the width of the plane or a router. And this only gives a 1/2 inch movement for the router, leaving an approximately inch long slot. And the reason it's only an inch long is because maple is actually pretty stable and only contracts and expands on the order of 1/8 inch for a foot. So I'll be making the channels basically 1 inch long, which is going to be plenty. And of course, they're going to be anchored at the very middle, and then the slots will be the longest. Well, they'll be 1 inch long here, nothing in the middle, because that locks it in place, and then inch long here, and that gives plenty of room for the whole top to expand and contract. And then they will slide freely in the channels that this is securing, and this will be held in place with wood pegs going through channels in the tongue here. So once I start to cut these, you'll see more. Thanks. Hello. So we're about to start routing the channels. So I've got a piece in here. So these pieces, these cross members here, are actually cherry. I don't know if you can see a good view of that. Some really beautiful cherry. And I've sprayed some clear, clear spray paint over the writings to kind of help preserve them. So I've got this jig here, and this guy right here is just a straight edge going underneath. That's approximately half an inch from the center line of this channel. And then I've got it mounted to the table there. So that's loose, so I can put a clamp down on the top of the jig to hold the work down that I'm milling. And we'll see how it goes. No, really hard to see. Okay, so this is what I just cut. It used to look like this. So that allows the washer and the screw to slide back nice and easy. All right, next problem to solve after I've cut out all these channels is to figure out how deep to drill the hole. So if we use this as a model of the table, this is the tabletop thickness. This is a brace on the bottom. And if I push the screw, so this piece right here is the thinnest. And actually, one thing I realized is that these are dimensions that were used to cut these boards, because we've got 3 pieces times 35 inches by 3 inches by 13/16. And these are were 13/16, and they are 35 inches long. And there's 2 this width, and then the 2 here supporting the drawer are each 1.5 inches. So These started out as being 13/16, but when I took the boards off, they weren't flat. They curved and bowed. They didn't twist much, but so I took a plane to them, smoothed them off to make the surface that goes against the bottom of the table as flat as reasonable. This one here was pretty bad. In fact, I had to take off, a 1/16 to get it down to 3/4 inch because this guy here was humped up. So if I take my screw and I put it through the thinnest board, I end up with about a little over 1/8 of an inch, I think, right here. And I think that's too much. If I were to drill this drill into the tabletop from the bottom, that's pretty close. Doesn't give me much room to come back later and plane the top to make it nice and flat. So I'm going to drill a little less than this, which is actually going to accommodate all the other holes except maybe this one and another one, so that I'll just have to cut 2 screws shorter so that they don't bottom out in the hole. So in order to drill these, I made a straight hole with my square here, my little tiny square with the drill, and I'll just put this on the bottom of the tabletop and drill down using this as a depth gauge, and just go all the way down to the bottom till it hits the chuck. That'll be my depth gauge so that I don't go through the tabletop. All right, we'll get set up for that. All right, folks, so I've taken the board here with the slots cut out and measured where it belongs on the table bottom. And lo and behold, I've got a little bit extra light here so you can see better. You can see the original holes and the new slot right here. And a new slot in the holes. Now, of course, these aren't either in line with these or on top of, because of the wood I removed when I re-ripped the boards and then cut the ends off in preparation for the end treatment, for the end grain. So this one's close, the other one's farther off. Anyway, so the method here was put the board where I wanted it, take this handy dandy mechanical pencil and extend it so I can go around to mark where the hole is, and then with my drill tool here that I made, I'm drilling from the top here through to the bottom. I added a 1/16 of an inch of tape here just to give me some more margin without going through the top. And these lines came across and go down, but I've got to redraw them to the bottom here. And then this line here goes through the center as well. So there's a line going across through the center and there through the center, so that basically I can, and then I put a mark, kind of hard to see here. There you go. That mark across, and then I extended the line going through multiple points here, multiple holes down the end. And then when I go to drill, I'll simply line up the marks. This is upside down. Well, I'll put it like that. Line up the marks this way and that way. And that way I'm drilling into the part of the slot that I want to drill into. I don't want to drill in the middle necessarily or either end. In this case here, since this is near the middle of the table, I'm drilling near the middle. Over here, it's hard to see the slot drawing. But since it's we're coming out of winter, humidity here is kind of low, lower relative to the summer. So I want to put the screw toward the inside end of the slot, so that when the table gets wider, the inside end of the slot moves outward and can slide inside the slot. So I'm almost putting the screw into the table, maybe about a quarter of the way from the end, to give it room to expand and contract. So it can still contract a little more if it needs to. But again, this wood, this is certainly maple. This is either maple or there's another type of wood I mentioned a while back in episode 1 that I thought it might be. But anyway, I'm going to start drilling. Okay, I'll do that about 12, 15 more times. All right, all the braces are screwed down, and this is just temporary while I work on the top and the ends. But my plan worked out pretty well. I'm pretty confident I didn't screw through the top, but we'll find out. As far as how flat it is, let's see here. It's relatively flat. I mean, considering it's a bunch of boards put together, and it's 3 feet wide. Put the sight down here. So it does need some gentle planing, just to kind of even it out. I don't need to make it perfectly flat, just so there's no bumps and places for water to settle, that kind of thing. Anyway, we'll see what happens next. All right, folks, it's about time for me to start actually planing the rabbet on here. I just did a little bit of here that's maybe half an inch or so, but I've got my fancy little rabbet plane here. Picked this up recently, spent last evening sharpening the blade. So this right here is a width gauge, a width measure here, so that I can regulate how wide of a rabbet I'm making. And then to get the blade out, trying to be very careful because sharpening plain blades is not trivial. So sharpened this puppy up last night. It did shave my my hair. It looks dirty because it's got wax on it, but pretty darn sharp now. And I was able to cut this rabbit here with it. So I'm ready to start planing this rabbit in earnest. And kind of a risk because I'll be removing a 3/4 inch wide rabbet, going down about a 1/4 of an inch. This rabbet plane does come with a, I don't know what you call it, it's like a side cutter to initiate this this edge right here to try and make it clean so it doesn't chip out as you're planing. I'll try and expose this. Since this is only about 3/8 of an inch, but I'm actually making it 3/4 inch wide, I've got to reposition this so that the cutter is pointed down. This is the little cutter right here. I'll loosen that up. So again, its purpose is to make a clean line in the wood, so that when this plane blade wants to cut along, this plane blade isn't ripping up wood that it's not supposed to be touching. Let me try and get this out of here. No, that's the right size. So I have it turned so that the cutter isn't facing down, but this is what this little guy looks like. It's got just a little tiny edge right there that will end up cutting the wood like this. Whereas the plane blade is following this so that it leaves a clean edge on the surface. In some places here it doesn't look like it's very clean, but this wood is very soft, and I suspect when I go to the full 3/4 inch, it'll look a little better because the wood in here is this was pretty close to the edge of the table that was not in great shape in terms of rot. So point that guy down. Now, you could be saying, Parker, you could just use a router to do this, or a circular saw, and you're like, and I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely correct. But the point of doing this is not just to actually make the table, but to get practice at this kind of technique. So you can see this little point here. Maybe you can't. Extends down below the surface of the plane just a little bit, and that provides the cut that prepares for the corner of the plane blade itself. So this is not a very expensive plane at all. I think I paid $65 for it. I could have gotten one off of eBay for the same price. But I figured I don't need to know that my plane is an antique. I just need it to kind of do what I need it to do. This lever right here is the adjustment up or down for the blade for depth of cut. And then this is the width of cut. So this, I need to measure at 3/4 of an inch. So let me do that. Yeah. Now, since this table is not absolutely flat right now, before I start doing this in earnest, I want to clamp a board to the table to make it more flat. And then as I get closer to 1/4 of an inch depth here, I want to make sure that if there are any bumps and humps on it, that I don't want to make it deeper than 1/4 of an inch anywhere, so that when I do stick it into the edging board, that it will tend to force the thing flat and keep it that way. That's the theory. I really want to make that tight because I don't want that to move. Now this here is the depth gauge. This prevents me from cutting the rabbit too deep. This I would want to be the 1/4 inch. So my procedure is basically going to be cut the rabbit 1/4 inch deep, 3/4 inch wide, and then I'll take the piece of maple. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll take the piece of maple and I'll make a groove in that. That's 3/4 inch deep, 1/4 inch wide, and then I'll make the other side, the bottom of the table. I'll make its rabbit match, so that I have a 1/4 inch thick tongue going into the end of the board, to the edge board, and that will simply be the thing that determines the three dimensions: 1/4, 1/4, 1/4. But the bottom is going to be thinner than 3/4 of an inch in places, so the rabbit won't be a 1/4 inch deep on the bottom necessarily. It will be on the ends and in most of the boards, but in some boards it won't be 3/4 of an inch thick. And then I have an idea for how to put in pegs. The middle one won't move, but the others will be able to move. Pegs in such a way that the end grain won't be sacrificed. That holds the peg in. So that'll be video number 3. All right. 3/4 inch, 1/4 inch. I'll finally adjust where this goes, and we'll see how it goes. Need to get my power cord break here. Here, I'll do this.